hope you're having a great Thursday.
Yes, even if it's not going so well, don't worry. This too shall pass. And after watching this live chat, you'll feel better. We laugh at this, but you know, over dinner with my mom, we were just saying about how, like, when we're going through a very difficult time, it really does feel like it won't end.
Yeah.
And your suffering will continue and you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to the times in my life when I felt, well, sometimes it's just like you not very happy with something, or maybe you're just having an ache in your ear or something like that, right? You feel like it's going to go on forever, or you just cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes.
Yeah, but it will also pass, right? Hi, Ludi from the Philippines. Hi, Jimmy. Hi. Okay, so today's topic is about letting go of guilt and blame towards ourselves. So essentially, self-forgiveness. And obviously, we've spoken about forgiveness a lot over this channel over the past few years. But one of the main reasons I want to talk about self-forgiveness is because I realized and I noticed that there is a trend of us feeling like we are responsible for someone else's suffering.
Yeah.
Or that is our fault.
Yeah, and that translates to guilt, right?
Yeah, especially amongst family members. Yeah.
And sometimes we feel like it is some characteristic within us, right? That constantly continues making people miserable or suffer or angry at us, right?
Yeah.
And we feel bad at that. And that feeling is guilt.
I guess like I want to ask you guys, like, do you have any guilt that you carry around that you feel bad about, especially when it comes to disappointing people, disappointing maybe your parents, maybe disappointing your kids if you are a parent, maybe disappointing the people you love just generally, you know? Because I think that like it doesn't affect us so badly when it comes to our colleagues or our friends, but the responsibility we feel for the happiness of our family and the people we love, we take it very seriously. And I would say that like we are responsible for our actions and how we handle situations. But whether or not our family member is happy is not in our control.
Yeah. And you know, funnily, sometimes when we have a lot of guilt, right? It affects our behavior around family members, that we are sometimes a little bit more sensitive, defensive, you know, and easily triggered with family members when they bring up something, or and that affects how we act around them, right? And we might not be pleasant to be around, so it doubles the guilt. Like, oh, you know, I feel bad for this, and then when we had this whole conversation, now I feel even worse for this, right?
Yeah. Jimmy, what do you mean by feeling like you could have done better, like in terms of work or in terms of like your family? What do you mean?
You know, doing better is a very
Ginger,
interesting thing.
sending love back to.
We had this conversation before, right? About like doing your best, right?
Yes.
And what does it mean to do your best? And I personally feel that whatever you do is your best at that current the current ability, right? Whether it's your mental ability, whether it's your emotional ability. And the next time you can always do better if you want to. But the time that you did whatever you did was the best you could do, because that's what you did.
It's not about excusing ourselves. I think that like one of the things we want to make clear when we talk about self-forgiveness, it's not saying I'm not going to take responsibility for my actions and I'm just going to brush everything under the carpet, and if I've hurt you, I'm going to pretend like I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not self-forgiveness. You know, that's denial. And excusing our own behavior and some kind of refusal to reflect and grow.
Yeah.
Self-forgiveness works very differently, where we are able to see, like Yuri said, the mistakes that we've made, and we go, that was my best.
Yeah.
Even if, let's say, you're in your mind, you want to be at this level, you know, like when you play Street Fighter, you know, right? And you're thinking that my capabilities are this level.
Yeah, I can always beat this character, or I can do this, right?
Yeah, but then in reality, when you're actually playing the game, maybe you're like gonna wall up and like
maybe you just didn't do so well that as well as you thought you would. Right?
Yeah. And so I think that when we are behaving in a way that we're not very proud of, even though ideally we know that we could do better, like maybe there are different times where you have done better, but in that moment you didn't do the way that you would feel proud of. Maybe you've yelled at someone, maybe you've said things you wish you could have taken back, maybe even when it goes to like upbringing, like, you know, maybe you regret the way you talk to your kids and now you wish that you had done something differently. Or vice versa, maybe it's with your parents and you regret the way that you've treated your parents in the past and you feel guilty about, you know, their suffering because of you, and all these words in your head, you are like taking a lot of that suffering, welcoming the suffering into your lives because you feel like you deserve to suffer for having caused the people you love to be in pain.
Now, this is a very interesting thing, and I want to highlight this thing about guilt in our current culture, right? And it's often seen as guilt as this redeeming quality, right? As this good thing. Like, it's good to have a bit of guilt. If not, why do we want to do better, right?
It's like an indication of conscience.
And guilt essentially is the same as anger, except that it's directed towards yourself, right? So sometimes people might say, yeah, it's good to be angry at certain people. You know, when you're angry at them, it forces them to do a little bit better, right? And it's the same thing as saying that, oh, you know, it's good to be a little bit angry at myself because when I do that, I get a bit better. Now, these are the very, I would say, low-skilled methods of trying to do better. Because these are the suffering-causing methods, right? Whether it's suffering to yourself or suffering to others, in terms of guilt, it's suffering to yourself.
And I think self-forgiveness is hard because we think we deserve that suffering.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, you know, and this is very ingrained in our lives because if you're young and you have parents who get angry at you because they love you, right? Then as an adult, you would feel like it's okay to get angry at not just other people but at yourself. Because you want to improve. Because in today's society, or maybe not just today, like in the human like society, I think anger has always and constantly been used as a tool to show like encouragement, to scare you into doing better, to kind of like scare you into wanting to grow and achieve more. So like you were saying, like, you know, like anger, like guilt is often seen as a good thing because anger is often seen as a good thing.
It's a bit like a hammer, right? It's like saying that, you know, we can hammer people into shape, right? I'm gonna hammer that person into shape. And you know, in some ways it looks like it does its job, but it creates all these sort of side effects of pain and suffering, and lack of harmony and guilt and so many things, right? And it's the question to ask, right, simply is to say, can we improve without suffering? And the answer is yes.
Because if you look at like parents bringing up kids, can kids grow up with common sense and manners and a conscience and values and principles without you having to yell at them, without you having to be angry at them or even punishing them in any way that's painful? And the answer is yes, right? But it requires people with very, very high skills to be able to bring up their kids in that sense, because we're human. We do get affected, we do get impatient, we do get angry, and and when we are affected and frustrated and stressed out, it's our tendency to take it out on the people around us. And so that's why our family members will often feel our anger towards them. Now, Jimmy here says we always feel that we could have done better, always regret after I get angry and anything, feels that it's not necessary. I think that you are not alone in feeling this way.
I think we feel the same as well. We experience the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like even after we argue sometimes, like, you just feel bad.
And sometimes even when you feel bad by yourself, right? You feel that it's not necessary. Now, the interesting thing is, on hindsight, we can feel that it's not necessary. But while in the moment of emotion, right? Sometimes we feel very upset or frustrated, or sometimes we express it, sometimes we don't. But we know that these emotions were within us. And later we say, you know, that's such a not useful, unproductive emotion, right?
Yes.
But we still feel it. And that's an interesting thing, because as humans, we have all these thoughts and all these emotions that get triggered.
Yeah.
And to be able to, how do we work with those emotions, as opposed to saying, you know what, I feel so bad for you solve this guilt again, right? I feel so bad for feeling bad, right?
Yeah, like Jimmy here is saying, you always regret after you get angry at something, you know, because after that you feel that it's not necessary. And so this is why self-forgiveness is so important, and why we're talking about this today. Because I want to like highlight this comment. We always feel that we could have done better. Now, I would like all of us to change that thought in our heads, and because you could not have done better. And I think we need to be honest and admit to ourselves, wait, in your ideal world, and you as your ideal person, like I'm saying, if you're playing a game in Street Fighter, you know, you're like this ultra awesome, you know, character that you can like win at every game. Like obviously, like in our ideal world, and when we are in the best mood, and we would like ourselves to be entirely capable of like being calm and being patient and everything. This is why when we say something that we regret, or we get angry and we make mistakes, we think we could have done better. Now, the reality is that you could not have done better, because like you were saying earlier, what you have just done was already your best in that moment, in that second. Your mind frame, the way you're feeling, whether you've practiced patience in the past, I mean, all of that accumulates and culminates into this one moment where you react or you say something, and that is your best. And so part of the guilt and blame that we bring towards ourselves is because we think we could have done better. And I think I want us all to be honest with ourselves and tell ourselves that if you've made a mistake and you have said something that hurt someone, you could not have done better. Tell yourself that was the best I could have done in that moment. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that you don't carry around the guilt, or like, oh yeah, you know, I'm actually more capable. So why didn't I? Why didn't I live up to my capabilities?
Yeah, or on the flip side, you could be also the kind of person who thinks that I'm such a terrible person. You know, I've always known that I have this problem, and this goes to show that I'm such a problematic person, right?
Yeah, the self-judgment and the criticism starts happening. Like Jimmy says, I always feel calmer the next morning, and thinking back of what happened, I kind of feel upset about myself at being angry or talking in a rash manner. And I think this is what a lot of us do experience. It's called regret, right? We get upset at ourselves. So the key is we don't want to get upset at ourselves. You know why? Because it doesn't help us actually change. This is why, ask yourselves, why do you keep experiencing regret after regret after regret after regret? Why does the same pattern keep occurring and occurring and occurring? It is because we're so busy feeling guilty and feeling bad for what we could have done better, that our mind is distracted, and we're not actually acknowledging the real source of why we actually react that way. Is it because we have not really practiced patience? Is it because we take things personally? What are our fears and our needs? Why are we triggered in a certain way when talking to someone, right? If we don't go down this path, right, of self-reflection, then we go down the path of feeling bad and feeling guilty, and in our heart we think next time I'll do better.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not productive.
And we think that whole process is the end. It's the lesson already. I felt bad, and I'll see you next time I'll do better. So that's the end of that. Right? And next time it happens again, right?
It's like feeling bad feels like an action.
Yeah.
but it's not an action.
Yeah, and
it's
making
an
the
emotion.
decision to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that again, it's not enough. Because what really we need is the difference, right? The more skilled behavior, right? As opposed to the less skilled behavior. But just because you want to be better at Street Fighter doesn't mean the next time I put a coin in and play, I'm going to be better. Right?
like,
oh, you know what? I played terribly just now, you know. Oh, okay. You know, I feel so bad. I'm going to do better next time. Okay, put my coin in. I'm going to play it. And it's still the same, right?
Yeah. I hope you know what Street Fighter is. If not any other game, it applies to this analogy. Now, the only way we can reflect and genuinely ask ourselves, like, hang on, why did I lose my temper? Why did I say things that hurt my parents or my kids? Why did I completely lose it like an insane person sometimes? Why? And the only way we'll be able to do all that is that we forgive ourselves. And I'm not asking you to excuse yourself, because excusing yourself means you don't even think about it and you go distract yourself on Instagram or Facebook.
I'm just like that, so that's it.
Yeah, right? Oh, next time I'll do better. I think like even feeling bad and next time I'll do better is an excuse, because you're not doing anything, right? Now, to be able to say, I'm going to identify my triggers. I want to look back at my pattern and see why it keeps reoccurring, right? And I know people cannot change, so I need to identify what is it that I need to work on starting tomorrow. Is it I don't have to take things personally? Is it my tone of voice? Is it do I have to understand my own triggers? What is it? Now, this is only possible when you have forgiven yourself for that mistake or having lost your temper. You need to forgive yourself. And the reason we forgive ourselves is because your mind needs to now focus on the present. If you don't forgive yourself, we are still living in the past.
Yeah.
And you know, self-improvement requires 100% of our focus and our discipline and focus and discipline and practice. It requires 100% of our brain power. And so if we even allocate a smidgen of our brain power to living in the past, where we are kicking ourselves for making the mistake, where we are feeling bad or guilty for having made a mistake, then we're not entirely present enough to be able to focus on self-improvement. What has happened has already happened. And there's nothing like Yuri and myself. Like, I don't know so much about you. Maybe I should ask you, right?
Well, ask me.
Okay, so for me, right, when I've made a mistake, I feel bad for like a few seconds. But what quickly kicks in that takes over the feeling bad is a message, like a thought in my head. Like I talk to myself and I say, Xandria, it's already happened. You can't change the past, but you can be better in the future. And therefore, I don't usually feel bad or guilty about anything. I would say what's meant to happen is meant to happen. So if I made a mistake or I lost my temper and I did something I'm not proud of, whether I've lied or hurt somebody, I think to myself, you know, that wasn't intentional, but it happened anyway because of my own issues, my own inability. And so I don't want to be mad at myself. I don't want to like kick myself for this. I'm going to say, you know what? It was meant to happen because I'm meant to learn something about myself. So in order to kind of like do that mistake justice, it's kind of like, you know, repentance, if you want to call it. The only way for me to repent for what I regret is to make sure that I put in practices to change the future.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I don't have regrets or guilt.
Yeah.
Are you the same?
Well, mine's slightly different. I do feel guilty sometimes, and what I do is I look at that guilt. I look at my feeling of guilt and ask myself, where does this come from? You know, where does this feeling come from? Because all my suffering I know has a source, and I can't just say, oh, I feel bad and that's it.
Maybe
it's just me. I feel bad.
Maybe you feel guilty because you've hurt someone. You know?
Yeah, maybe I feel guilty because I've hurt someone. But I think beyond that, sometimes it's a sense of identity a little bit. Like, or maybe I'm a person who I'm a person who this, I'm a person that, I'm a person who's not very good at this, I'm a person not very good at that, or I'm a person who keeps disappointing people, for example. Sometimes you have thoughts like that.
Yes.
And if you do, then you ask, where do these stories come from? Right?
That's
Let me
right.
explore this story a little bit. And it's an uncomfortable thing because you're already feeling guilty, right? And you want to dig a bit deeper, right? But that's where the work comes in, I feel. And you look at that and you say, okay, why do I feel guilty? Like, okay, because I said this thing quite rashly and this person felt bad. Okay, now the question is, I can be better, right? So what can I do to make the situation better?
So you feel guilty for how long? Like
I don't
because
know.
what you're saying are trying you're kind of taking away the guilt already.
Yeah.
Right.
I suppose I'm not a person to dwell very much on guilt, but I'm a person to dwell a lot on the story, right? And it depends on what the story is, right? Sometimes stories about me, sometimes stories about the other person, but actually it's my story of the other person, right?
Yeah.
So, I believe everybody has stories about a situation that causes suffering, whether they're angry at themselves or they're angry at somebody else or they're unhappy or guilty.
What Yuri means by story is what you're saying to yourself in your head.
Yeah, what's the truth? What if in the film of your life, right? What's being told right now, right? In the films you have villains, you have people who do bad things and good things, right? The heroes. Now in your story, who's the hero, who's the villain, what has happened? What's the story?
Sometimes the story is self-judgment as well. Like you were saying earlier, it's like, I'm always disappoint people. I'm so stupid.
Yeah,
right?
I wish I were more skilled in dealing with people, but I'm the kind of person who always makes people. So the thing is it productive? Is this story productive? And when I say productive, does it move us forward to a situation where there is more joy, more lightness, more harmony, right? And if it moves us towards a situation where there's more guilt, more things to repent for, right? Then I feel like that might not be such a skilled situation to be in. I mean, to do, because like for me, I think most of us, our goal is to find lightness and joy and meaning and harmony in life, right? And not this heaviness of guilt or this heaviness of burden of, I'm such a terrible person, I need to pay back for being such a terrible person,
This is like why, even though on the surface everybody doesn't want to feel guilty, if you ask anyone, but of course I don't want to feel guilty, the question is like, how do I not feel guilty, right? Now, how do you not feel guilty has a lot to do with whether or not you deep down inside actually want to feel guilty. A lot of us, it's just like, I don't want to feel angry. How do I not feel angry? Well, you got to ask yourself, do you actually want to feel angry? A lot of the times, we feel like anger is self-preservation. It's a sense of control.
It's a sense of ego as well.
Yeah, so we hold on. We want to be angry because we think we're right. And so we're waiting for the other person to apologize. And in the meantime, we feel justified being angry. And that's why how to let go of anger starts with even wanting to let go of anger, even when you are right? Because whether you're right or wrong, do you enjoy feeling angry? Is anger stealing away your happiness? If the answer is yes, then why are you self-sabotaging? Similarly with guilt as well. Right? We think that, I want to know, how do I stop feeling guilty? How do I forgive myself? The thing is, do you even want to forgive yourself? Or deep down inside, do you think you deserve the punishment that you're inflicting upon yourself?
Yeah. When it comes to forgiveness, and we're talking a lot about forgiveness here, right?
Yes.
My term for forgiveness is acceptance.
Yes.
Right? It's, for me, they're interchangeable, right? So what does acceptance mean? It means seeing something for what it is.
Yes.
And like really acknowledging the fact that this thing is there and not having to have any negative sort of emotion towards that thing. Say for example, if I'm sitting beside a person that I find to be the serial killer, for example, right?
Going hardcore here.
Yeah, or a person
Why not?
who steals cereal boxes from the shelves of supermarkets, right?
Let's go with the black.
But anyway, like, I can sit beside a person and know that this person is a serial killer.
Not me.
I mean, this person, right? And if, but I could sit beside a person and really have this sense of disgust and you know, like, oh, this person should not exist, and that's two very different things for the same situation, you know. And that's the same for us as well. I feel like when we see something and accept something, that doesn't mean we say this should be more, there should be more of this in the world.
This is an interesting thing you bring up, because oftentimes when we're sitting beside a serial killer, the kind who murder people and not the ones in the supermarket.
I mean, normally we scared.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like if they're behind bars, for example, right? So when we're sitting beside a murderer or a serial killer, I think us human beings' natural reaction is fear, right? We would fear the person, and also we would have a lot of aversion, right, towards this person, and we would kind of feel like, instead of trying to understand the person, we would judge normally based on, oh, you're a bad person, how could you have done that, you're a terrible person, right? And we would feel very justified feeling this way, because everything we've learned in our religion, in school, in our upbringing points to good and bad, like good and evil, right? And we categorize this person as bad and evil. Similarly, when we have that kind of mindset, when it comes to ourselves and you have committed a crime, or you have hurt someone you love, or you've committed a terrible mistake, or you've said something that you completely regret, how hard are you on yourself? If you are hard on other people, if your reaction towards someone you don't really know or understand is judgment and fear and harshness, then similarly, and you think the person deserves it, right? Because they are bad, right? So similarly, when you've been bad, you think that you deserve the same kind of treatment. You automatically, as a reaction, will judge yourself. You will feel like you deserve to be judged. And that, you know, this is your repentance, you know? Like, I'm judging myself so that, like, I want to acknowledge that I am so flawed and I want to be better, right? On the surface, it's always a desire to grow, that we are so hard on ourselves. But we don't see that this judgment and harshness towards ourselves, it doesn't change anything, right? We've said it before, we're saying it again. Guilt is not an action. You can feel repentant, but even if you punish yourself, what does repentance even mean? It means you punish yourself. Even when you punish yourself, can you erase what you've done? No, right? And what has already happened has already happened. But you can change the future. Does punishing yourself change the future?
Yeah.
No.
You know, this judgment that Xandria is talking about, right, is whether it's of ourselves or towards other people, right? It's a habit in our minds. We tend to, it is tied to the word should, right? We look at somebody and say, oh, they should be this, or they should be that, they should be loyal children to their parents, or they should not kill people, or they should not this, and I should be better, I should this, right? And therein lies, I think, the problem. Because when we look at this, instead of should, we substitute it with the idea of, is this bringing more joy into the world, or is this bringing more suffering into the world? And I think when we see clearly, we would definitely want to choose the path of more joy for ourselves than suffering for ourselves.
Sometimes we don't think we deserve joy because we've caused suffering upon others.
Yeah, and we feel like we should be punished, or we should feel bad for this, right?
Should is impractical and unproductive because we don't grow. There is no self-improvement. I'll give you another word that I think is very helpful to and very productive in growing and self-improvement, and the word is why. So instead of saying you shouldn't have killed someone, the question is, why did you kill someone? Because going down the path of understanding is much better than going down the path of punishment.
Yeah.
When you understand why your pattern keeps reoccurring, when you understand why you keep being triggered, then you can address the symptom at the root, not just the symptoms, you know, on the surface, right? Because if we don't know why we always say something to hurt this particular person, or why we always argue with this particular person, or why we even blame ourselves every time something bad happens, we must know why. Is it because growing up you think that because, you know, your parents tell you that you're a bad person, like you're a bad girl or bad boy, and you deserve to be punished because you've committed this terrible act as a kid. Maybe you stole something, maybe you answered back, maybe you didn't finish your homework, I don't know. But it has to come from somewhere. This willingness to immediately blame ourselves has to come from somewhere, and you got to really go deep to understand why this pattern keeps reoccurring.
Yeah, sometimes we have to look ourselves as creatures of conditioning and creatures of instinct as well. There are some things we are prone to do.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's a biological thing, sometimes it's a psychological thing, sometimes it's the way we were brought up, right?
Yeah. Sometimes conditioning.
Exactly, yeah. And all these things are part of ourselves. And we can look at it, understand where these things come from, and then also choose behaviors that are more productive, are more skillful towards bringing us happiness. And sometimes it requires real skill, which means it requires real practice as well. Because skill is not something you just intend to have and then have it.
This is why I built my happiness program, because happiness is like you want to be happy, how? Right? It sounds so intangible. It's like you want to forgive yourself, like how? It sounds so intangible. It needs certain skills, certain ability. We have to practice, right? Understanding ourselves. We have to practice not taking things personally. We have to practice letting go of expectations. We have to practice so many things. Fiona here says, totally can relate to this topic. I have something that triggered me all this time, but I have stayed silent for 15 years. I'm worried that one day I'm going to lose it, and it's just a ticking bomb to break the relationship completely. I don't know what I want yet, and I don't know if I am ready to deal with the consequences.
When it comes to the idea of being triggered in relationships, which all of us do at some level, right? I always try to find, I always think that the most, the most productive way of dealing with that is to look at inside, to look at how we are and why we are triggered. Back to the why of Xandria is talking about, right? Is that where my story makes me triggered. And sometimes the stories are very, very deep-rooted things that maybe you're taught that boys in a family should behave a certain way, or girls should behave a certain way. And then these are super deep-rooted things that you feel are normal part of life, right? That you might get triggered by. So to look at all these things very deeply and to say, why am I triggered? It's not why is the person such an asshole or something like that. It's why am I triggered?
It's not why is he or she triggering me?
Yeah. And then that is a path towards helping yourself look at things in different ways.
Yeah. Fiona, if you're still watching, it sounds like this is something that have bothered you. Really bothers you, because 15 years, it's over a decade. And this is a relationship, you're saying, right? So it's a ticking bomb. And you don't know what you want yet, and you don't know whether you're ready to deal with the consequences. So this story, like what you've said, it sounds like you're aware. And also at the same time though, it sounds like you have boxed yourself in a lose-lose situation, where if you don't say anything, then you're a ticking bomb waiting to happen. 15 years already. Someday, one day soon, boom, it's going to happen. So there's a lose situation. Or if you say something, right, then you don't know whether you're ready for the consequences. So it seems like it's also a lose situation. So you've kind of boxed yourself in a lose-lose situation. And this is not real. This is a story. This is what Yuri was saying earlier, right? This is a story you've told yourself. Either I hold it in and I become a ticking bomb, or I say something and the consequences can be awful and terrible and I can't deal with it. These are the only two options that you've given yourself. So this is a story that's like replaying like a movie in your head, But when it comes to solving problems, there are many different stories that you can tell yourself.
When these stories, right, I just want to add, right, that the way you solve problems, the number of solutions that you have, right, really depends on the stories that you have as well. Because sometimes it seems obvious that maybe, you should go and talk to this person about this thing.
Yes.
But if let's say you said, no, it's a very shameful thing to bring this up with that person, then that's one of your stories that already limit your...
Close.
Yeah. So people who are feeling very sort of restricted in what they can do and say, oh, it's either this or that, and that's all, and both are bad. If you can widen your story and sort of dismantle a bit of the borders surrounding these things, then the solutions to your problems becomes just multiplies. I really, really feel so. And sometimes I feel like, I'm bogged down by a certain thing. And I realize that, hey, actually I could do it this way. I just need to maybe think that this is a possible solution when I thought, no, this is not one of the solutions because I don't like talking to this person, or I'm scared to talk to this person, or da. So I find that solutions multiply when my stories are sort of more open-ended.
If you feel like you're being triggered by something, I feel like it is your responsibility to untrigger yourself, or to find out how to let go of that trigger. It is not up to anybody else to be able to provide you with that solution. You know what I mean? Yeah. Gina here says, I'm often angry at my daughter because she doesn't want to do anything and lays on the bed all day. I try to get her out and encourage her to something and happiness, and then after days or hours I blow up and I get angry. I feel like a terrible parent. I was just before I even finish your message, I was gonna say to you that you don't have to blame yourself, but it's easier said than done, because I think parenting, Yuri and I are not parents, but we've spoken to my mom at length about so many of the difficult emotions that parents actually go through when it comes to their kids not behaving in a way that they think is ideal, or they will hope to have for their kids because they love their kids. I think that for somebody to lay in bed the whole day or not do anything, or even for somebody who is very productive and doing everything and studying way too hard and getting stressed out, there's always a reason. Why is the most important question. And I think that the guilt from a parent comes a lot from feeling like the why has something to do with you, that you failed as a parent, that you were not good enough, and that's why they're behaving that way, that you must have not done something right, otherwise maybe your daughter wouldn't be that way. And these are all the thoughts that you need to remove from your head, because although it is coming from a place of love, in actuality, you are doing your daughter a disservice, because you're taking the attention away from her and putting it upon yourself. Because when we feel guilty, right, it comes from the ego, it comes from fear, it comes from need. That's what the ego is. The ego is fear and need. And so when we're operating out of guilt, it's no longer about the people we care about. Suddenly it becomes about us, where we're turning the spotlight from wanting to help someone to it's about me, because I'm busy feeling guilty, right? So instead of spending my brain power being able to identify or diagnose or understand or communicate or whatever it is to sort of like see the source of the problem, most of that effort is being spent on feeling bad. But again, it's a natural reaction, right? And half the time, I think that it is your guilt that is making you angry, right? Because you need proof that your daughter is improving, because when she improves, you feel better as a parent. We need proof that the people we love are happy, because when they are happy, it signifies that we are successful as a parent or as a partner or as a child. Right? And this is something that we have to acknowledge and understand about why we welcome guilt and what actually is the result of that guilt. We want people to be happy. Even when Yuri and I argue, right? Sometimes like, oh, we're not happy with each other. We resent the fact that the person is not happy. Why? Because we want the person to look happy. We want the person to be happy, because it signifies that, I'm not wrong. If you're happy, it means that I'm not wrong. Or if you're happy, it means that I must be a good wife, or whatever it is.
Or, sometimes we even want the other party to feel guilty, right? So that's the thing, right? Like when you're surrounded by a culture that guilt is a tool, guilt is a something that, oh, you should feel guilty. Then I feel alright. Then I feel like you're okay, right?
Yeah.
So that perpetuates the idea that guilt is useful.
I think a lot of us have to accept ourselves and understand that although the people we love, we are responsible for a lot of their well-being, especially your kids, you are responsible for their well-being, but you are not at fault for whatever is the problem. And what it means is, yes, you have to try to help your children, but it doesn't mean that their failures or their inability or their depression or their anxiety or their, lack of motivation, it doesn't say anything about you as a parent. And I think that the only way we can accept this is that we accept ourselves. That means you are imperfect, and that's okay. And that you are trying your best, and that's okay. And you are scared, and that's okay. And that you doubt if you're doing the right thing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
This is part of the journey of being human. But to think that it is your fault that the person is that way is not productive. Maybe they are reacting based off of your behavior. That means it is your responsibility to solve this problem.
Yeah.
But at any point, we don't need to blame ourselves.
Yeah, and we don't need to blame the other person as well.
Yes.
When we are a person who feels guilt a lot, we tend to use guilt as a tool as well.
Yeah.
And so, then that doesn't create harmony, right? That just creates this both sides just not being happy, right?
Using guilt as a tool also manifests into using anger as a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, those are the unskilled emotions being used to try to create change. And sometimes it does create change, right? It makes a person do things that you might want them to do.
Yeah.
But the side effect is that they are not happy, and you are not happy either.
It is very hard for us to accept, I would guess, not just loved ones, but children specifically. It is very hard for us to accept children, your children, or our children the way they are, because we always feel like how they are is a reflection of us.
Yeah.
And we take it very personally.
Yeah, and sometimes we take it so personally that we
Project
that onto our children, and they
Yes.
feel so much guilt because we want them to feel guilty for the inadequacies of their
because we feel like it'll motivate them.
Yeah,
right? Because
it
it
will.
comes from a place of love.
yeah.
But it backfires.
Yeah, and I think when Xandria says it comes from a place of love, it's kind of like the idea of love, because true love is actually this forgiveness, this acceptance, right? Like, you are what you are, and whatever it is, I love you, right? As opposed to like, oh, I'm going to make you suffer because I love you.
Yeah.
Right?
But we don't see it as suffering. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, we see anger as a good thing. We see guilt as a good thing. So we don't see it as I'm inflicting suffering upon you. See, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
stories has to change, right?
Accepting the people you love, whether it's your child, your parents, your spouse, and you're watching right now, and you have all these people in your life, accepting them for who they are is not saying that if they're stealing and killing and basically sabotaging themselves, that you should just like, oh, okay, you know what, do what you will, I accept you. That's not the acceptance I'm talking
Yeah.
about. The acceptance I'm talking about is non-judgment. Oh, you stole something, right? I want to know the why. There is no, oh, you're terrible, how can you be a thief? I'm not even going to call you a thief, because I know that there must be something, some source that you're suffering that is causing you. There must be a reason that's causing you to do something like that.
Yeah.
So there's no judgment. I accept you for who you are because I believe that you can be better. But it's okay that you are who you are right now, because I'm here and I will always have your back and I will help you. So it's saying that, if you stole something or you committed a crime, or, you're feeling depressed or you're feeling demotivated, it's okay. It's okay. You're not any lesser a human being. You're not terrible. You're not evil. You know, I love you just the same. Now, we do have a situation at hand.
Yeah.
So why does this keep happening and how can we solve it? So it's taking action. It's not saying, oh, you know, like, oh yeah, I accept you, so okay, continue.
Yeah,
you know, it's
I
not.
accept you, and this situation still hurts people or hurts yourself.
Yes.
That doesn't you know, just because I accept you doesn't mean that the effects of this situation does not present itself, right? So then we address the situation.
And similarly, self-forgiveness is exactly that. It's the ability to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? You did something awful, and you can't take it back, and that really sucks. Maybe it means that you're this person or that person or whatever it is, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it says about you. What matters is what are you going to do tomorrow? What matters is that how are you going to solve this?
Yeah.
If you regret something, how it's like, you know, if you can't run a marathon and you want to run a marathon, you can't just think, oh, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon. You know, like I'm going to be fast and I'm going to have stamina.
Yeah.
So similarly, when we accept ourselves and we forgive ourselves, it's not like saying that, oh, you know what, I forgive myself and, you know, tomorrow I'm going to be better. Like how? How are you going to build the muscles and the stamina?
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, like, I think it'd be useful not to look at ourselves, whether the things that we've done or said, as things that are bad inherently or good inherently, or, you know, terrible or fantastic. It's more towards looking at whether it causes suffering or not, right? Whether it brings more joy or not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes things can be cultural. Like, maybe we think, oh, you know, coming out as a homosexual or something like that might be such a terrible thing in my culture, right? But if we remove the label of bad or good and we say, what harm does this cause, right? What suffering does it cause and where is it coming from? And if there is suffering, then how can I alleviate that suffering? How can I take actions that alleviate that suffering? And I think then the way we look at the world is more towards being more skilled at bringing more happiness and peace.
To ourselves and to the people we love.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, we all as human beings don't have to be punished for something that we regret or for mistakes we've made. What we want to do is grow as a person. It is our responsibility to be better than we were. Yes, that's absolutely true. So step up and take the responsibility. And know that responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is not guilt. Self-improvement does not need harshness or judgment or criticism. Not towards others, and certainly not towards yourself. How we treat ourselves is how we treat others. How we treat others is how we treat ourselves. If you are a parent watching this, it is so urgent that you fully understand this whole concept and practice not blaming yourself and practice acceptance and practicing conscious growth in the sense like, you know, practicing patience and understanding and kindness and understanding your ego and identifying your triggers. These are all practices so that you don't react to situations.
Yeah, you know, look at your current, take the opportunity, right, after this chat to look at your current family culture, right, the culture of your spouse and you, to see whether it's built around blame and guilt.
Yes.
And if it is, you can always change it.
You can change it.
You can shift it towards something that's more useful.
And it always starts with something bad has happened. Okay, rephrase it. The story is not something bad has happened. It is, okay, I made a mistake, or that was undesirable, or that was unkind.
Suffering.
Or that was unkind and caused suffering. Change the story, first of all, right? And secondly, tell yourself then, oh, okay, so I don't want that to happen again. So what do I have to do? What do I have to immediately practice? Right? What books do I have to read? What what do I have to consciously already put into practice like tomorrow, right? And this is urgent because when we don't practice and do the work in our own lives, our children or your children will feel and will experience a certain pattern that will happen again and again in their lives.
The seeds are planted.
Yes.
In their consciousness, right?
Yes. And then when they self-sabotage or they react badly, right, you would feel responsible and you would feel guilty. And that just snowballs and it just goes on and on into a pattern where no one's really happy with each other. No one's really safe. No one really feels safe and comfortable and genuinely open and happy. And you won't be able to build the kind of loving family relationship that you want with your kids and with your parents and with your spouse. And so maybe it sounds scary, but it's not. It's a privilege.
It's hopeful that we all have the seed of this ability to create this other situation, right? To grow this other garden, right?
Yes.
If we tend towards it, if we bring our attention and our care towards cultivating these things, right? Then a different kind of garden will grow. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So we're going to leave you with that. So go build a different kind of garden. Nourish your plants. I was talking about plants and trees yesterday, So yeah, be proactive. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever guilt you're carrying with you, let them go by forgiving yourself. How do you forgive yourself? Accept that you're a human and that you're not perfect and you've made mistakes. It's in the past. Let them go. It's a new day tomorrow. You can try and you can work on it and you will grow. Just don't burden yourself with blame and guilt. All right?
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes.
Really appreciate all your comments and just being here to share your stories.
Yes. Oh, do you want to read this one comment from Lynn?
Says if we have done something bad, the person cannot forgive us and choose to leave us. We need to just accept it and move on.
Well, if a person chooses to leave you, what can you do except like say, okay, all the best to you?
You should just accept it and move on.
In
fact, with life, you should accept whatever life has it. And if you want to change things or want things to be different, you can work towards that too.
Yes.
It's really as simple as that. It's not as easy as that, but it's as simple as
It's
that.
not easy because the problem is that if the person doesn't forgive you, it's hard for you to forgive yourself because you already say you've done something bad. So a lot of the times we seek forgiveness from the other person because we seek to feel better about what we've already done because of the guilt that we carry around. So the best way to accept this and move on is for you to acknowledge that yes, you've done this thing, but you're going to do better. And you forgive yourself for that and you take responsibility, which means you must identify why you did that something bad. What was the trigger? What instigated it? Why did you react that way? Is it your temper? Is it your insecurity? Is it your ego? Is it your fear? Is it your needs? If you don't know why, it is your responsibility to understand yourself better so you can change the story in the future. That's how you accept and move on.
Yeah, I want to highlight something like, how imagine all your life you have somebody behind you with a whip and telling you to do good things and whipping you, right? Like don't do that, do this, right? and imagine that, right? And I would say that that's what feeling guilty is like. You think it's productive because I'm doing good things, but because there's someone, which is myself, whipping myself behind my back all the time saying that this is what drives me. Guilt is what drives me to do good things, right? And such a good situation, right? You think because I'm a good person because I have so much guilt.
I'm a good person because I'm whipping myself.
Because I'm whipping myself out of. I'm using all these bad experiences as a whip to whip myself to do good things. And the result is you try to do good things, but inside and all these things, it doesn't help you create more peace. There's a lot of suffering internally, although you create situations that are useful for other people, which I have to say that's great.
Yeah.
But if you want to skillfully do it, then you can't do it with a whip.
Yes. Yeah. Because the whip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't like the whip. Vona, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm glad you find this conversation beautiful. Bali says identifying the triggers to change the pattern by doing the work towards taking actions to grow, nurturing a different kind of garden, accepting yourself with love and kindness. Yes, that's a great summary. Thank you. Celeste Salamat from the Philippines. We are going to say goodnight to you guys now.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate just this whole interaction.
Yeah,
you know,
we just appreciate you being here. You know, all the different weeks that you come and the times that you come. It's just fantastic.
Before we go, how do you deal with obsessive thoughts? I think understanding why these obsessive thoughts come about and understanding why your behavior is such the way it is, without judging yourself, without thinking that it's wrong or weird to have obsessive thoughts, but rather focusing on like, okay, I'm the kind of person that really think about something a lot and I can become obsessed with it. So why does it happen? And talk to friends, read books, go Google, watch YouTube videos, go see a therapist, whatever it takes. Understand yourself. That's how you deal with it. Okay? Have a great night again. Bye. Be happy always.
Bye.